Welcome to the Special Forces in World War II podcast, transmitting on this frequency. This broadcast is your dedicated channel for comprehensive intelligence regarding World War II Special Forces operations. Our transmissions encompass in-depth analysis of their strategic maneuvers, cutting-edge equipment, illustrious biographies, and an array of pertinent subjects. The orchestration of these transmissions is executed by the expert team of the Special Forces in World War II website, a squad deeply immersed in the historical theatre. For further insights, visual aids, and captured moments frozen in time, navigate to our virtual headquarters at worldwar2-soft.com. Your immersion into the front lines of knowledge awaits. Over and out. Welcome to a new episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast. In this two-part series, we delve into the intricate web of events leading up to one of the most audacious rescue missions of World War II, Unternehmen Eiche, or Operation Oak. In this first part, we embark on a journey through the turbulent landscape of wartime Europe in 1943. Italy, once a stalwart ally of Nazi Germany, finds itself engulfed in chaos. Mussolini's grip on power weakens as the tide of war turns against the Axis powers, and he becomes a captive of his own people. For Hitler and his inner circle, the capture of Mussolini presents a significant strategic dilemma. Losing such a prominent figure could deal a severe blow to their faltering alliance. Thus, a desperate search ensues to locate and rescue Mussolini before the Allies can exploit his captivity for propaganda purposes. Join us as we unravel the intricate threads of this historical narrative. From the political intrigues of wartime Italy to the clandestine maneuvers of German intelligence, we explore the lesser-known aspects of the search for Mussolini and the efforts to secure his release. Through meticulous research and first-hand accounts, we piece together the puzzle that culminated in the inception of Unternehmen Eiche. This is a story of determination, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of a singular objective in the midst of global conflict. But that is only part one of the complete story. Stay tuned for part two, where we delve into the heart-stopping climax of this remarkable tale. The glider-borne assault by Fallschirmjägers on the Gran Sasso Hotel known as Unternehmen Eiche. Don't miss a single episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast, where history's special forces and most daring missions come to life. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts. As 1943 begins, Italy finds itself on the brink of defeat in World War II. The collapse of the African front on November 4, 1942, and the subsequent Allied landings in North Africa from November 8 to 12, 1942, leave Italy vulnerable to an Allied invasion. This situation is compounded by the defeat of the Italian Expeditionary Force in Russia and the continuous bombings of Italian cities, combined with food and fuel shortages, which lead to widespread demoralization among the Italian population. A growing majority of Italians now desire an end to the war and the breaking of their alliance with Germany. Italy's dependence on German support is critical, especially to maintain control over Tunisia, their last stronghold in Africa. During this challenging period, Italy's leader, Benito Mussolini, believes that the Mediterranean theater is vital for a turnaround in the war. However, his plans face a significant setback during a meeting with Adolf Hitler at Klesheim on April 29, 1943. Hitler dismisses Mussolini's proposal for a separate peace with Russia and refuses to move the German army to the south. This refusal is a significant blow to Italian morale, as the Wehrmacht losing faith in Italy's resolve, declines to send reinforcements to Tunisia. In this difficult situation, different groups, including the royal court, anti-fascist parties, fascists, and the general staff, start to look for exit strategies from the war. Notable figures like Crown Princess Marie-José and members of the pre-fascist elite begin to initiate contact with the Allies. However, following the Allies' demand for unconditional surrender at the Casablanca Conference, these efforts face significant challenges. The anti-fascist parties, weakened by 2 decades of dictatorship, are largely inactive, awaiting guidance from King Victor Emmanuel III. The king's reluctance to act is influenced by his personality, fears, constitutional doubts, and the potential fall of the monarchy regardless of the war's outcome. He is also distrustful of those who suggest that the Anglo-Americans would be lenient towards Italy. King Victor Emmanuel III continues to place his trust in Mussolini, hoping for a resolution to the crisis. Meanwhile, General Vittorio Ambrosio, the chief of the general staff, loyal to the king but opposed to the Germans, prepares for Italy's possible defeat. He positions officials loyal to the king in key military roles and tries to repatriate Italian forces discreetly. On February 6, 1943, Mussolini conducts a major government reshuffle, the most extensive in the 21 years of fascist rule. This includes replacing almost all ministerial positions in an attempt to address public dissatisfaction with the fascist party, but the reshuffle fails to have the desired effect. Among the new appointees, Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs Giuseppe Bastianini recognizes the seriousness of the situation. Like Mussolini, he seeks peace between Germany and the USSR and aims to form a bloc of Balkan countries led by Italy to counterbalance German influence in Europe. On April 14, 1943, Mussolini replaces the chief of police with Lorenzo Chierici, and 5 days later appoints Carlo Scorza as the new party secretary in a move to revitalize the fascist party. The fall of Tunis on May 13, 1943, signifies a crucial shift in the strategic balance. Germany, recognizing Italy's importance as an outer bastion of the Reich, prepares for Unternehmen Eiche and Unternehmen Constantine. These plans are intended to occupy Italy and the Balkan regions under Italian command, with the aim of taking control and disarming Italian forces ahead of their anticipated armistice with the Allies. In response, the Germans proposed an increase in land forces in Italy. However, both Ambrosio and Mussolini resist, asking instead for more aircraft to preserve Italian independence. The Allied capture of Pantelleria on June 11, 1943, the first Italian territory to fall, underlines Italy's precarious position. Mussolini had heavily fortified the island, yet it succumbs to the Allies after just a week of intense bombardment, indicating the imminent threat of an Allied invasion of Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, or Greece. During this period, King Victor Emmanuel III starts considering withdrawing from the war. Influenced by Duke Pietro d'Acquirone, Minister of the Royal House, he is concerned about the future of the monarchy as a public opinion begins to turn against it due to the king's inaction. In late May, pre-fascist politicians Ivano Bonomi and Marcello Soleri meet with d'Acquirone and the king's aide, General Puntoni, advocating for Mussolini's arrest and the establishment of a military government. However, these meetings result in frustration due to the king's lack of action. Dino Grandi, president of the Chamber of Fasces and Corporations, meets with the king on June 4, 1943. Despite his long association with Mussolini, Grandi envisions a post-fascist Italy and proposes a plan to remove Mussolini and challenge the Germans. However, the king, bound by his constitutional role, insists on a formal process involving either the parliament or the Fascist Grand Council. On June 19, 1943, a significant cabinet meeting takes place, highlighted by Senator Vittorio Cini's confrontation with Mussolini about finding a way to exit the war. Cini's subsequent resignation signals a waning of Mussolini's influence. Despite being warned about various plots, Mussolini remains dismissive. Mussolini's last major speech as Prime Minister on June 24, 1943, further reveals his diminishing grip. His confused and incoherent rhetoric, particularly a misstatement about the Anglo-Americans occupying Italy, reflects to many Italians a deep-seated problem with their leader. On June 30, 1943, Bonomi proposes 3 generals, Ambrosio, Marshal Pietro Badoglio, and Enrico Caviglia, as potential successors to Mussolini in a discussion with Crown Prince Umberto. By July 4, 1943, there are signs that the Crown is open to a change in government. Badoglio, a former chief of the General Staff and a personal friend of Duke d'Acquirone, emerges as a leading candidate. On the night of July 10, 1943, the Allies land in Sicily. Despite anticipating the invasion, the Italian forces, mirroring the situation in Augusta, Sicily's fortified stronghold, offer only initial resistance before being overwhelmed. This quick collapse signals the impending loss of Sicily. During July 15, 1943, King Victor Emmanuel III meets with Marshal Pietro Badoglio. Badoglio, having expressed willingness to lead a coup with or without royal support, is informed by the king of his upcoming role as head of government. The king, opposing a political government, advises Badoglio against seeking an immediate armistice. On July 16, 1943, Giuseppe Bastianini, the undersecretary, approaches Mussolini at Palazzo Venezia to present a telegram for Hitler expressing dissatisfaction over the lack of German reinforcements. Mussolini approves the message and authorizes Bastianini to establish covert contacts with the Allies, with the stipulation of Mussolini's non-involvement. Giovanni Fumi, a Vatican banker, is selected as the secret emissary, tasked with reaching London through Madrid or Lisbon. That evening, Bastianini meets with Cardinal Maglione, the Vatican Secretary of State, delivering a document outlining Italy's position regarding a potential unilateral exit from the war. Following the losses of Tunis and Pantelleria, a widespread belief settles over Italy that the war is essentially lost. The Sicilian landing further deepens this crisis. The fascists are particularly shocked by the lack of resistance and begin to question Mussolini's inaction. Italy is now at a crossroads, needing an institution capable of decisive political action. Dino Grandi, one of the few fascist leaders with a concrete plan, proposes deposing Mussolini, allowing the king to form a government devoid of fascists and confronting the German army in Italy. He hopes this could lead to a mitigation of the Casablanca Declaration for Italy. Meanwhile, new party secretary Carlo Scorza, aligning with the hardliner Roberto Farinacci, envisions a total war strategy and the political preservation of Mussolini. Farinacci, working closely with the Germans, and Scorza, aiming for direct party control, both support a totalitarian solution in partnership with Germany. Others, however, advocate for returning emergency war powers to the king. Farinacci finds himself increasingly isolated, with no moderate fascist leader possessing enough influence to navigate the crisis. Among the available state institutions, the party, the Chamber of Fasces and corporations, the Senate, and the Grand Council, the Senate, with its remaining anti- or pre-fascist members, and the Grand Council, where several are against Mussolini, emerge as potential platforms for action. A motion by 61 senators on July 22, 1943, calling to convene the Senate, is thwarted by Mussolini, who alone can summon the Grand Council and decide its agenda. In the critical days of July 1943, Sicily falls rapidly, laying bare the Italian armed forces' inability to resist an invasion of the mainland without substantial German aid. Mussolini, aware of the dire situation, writes to Hitler requesting a meeting to discuss Italy's plight. However, the letter is never sent, as Hitler, well informed by his ambassador to the Vatican and Himmler's agent Eugen Dollmann, preempts Mussolini's move and asks for an immediate meeting, due to concerns about Mussolini's lack of action and the ongoing Italian military debacle. Before this crucial meeting in Feltre, Vittorio Ambrosio, the chief of staff of the Italian armed forces, gives Mussolini a stark deadline. Italy must disengage from Germany within 2 weeks. The meeting takes place on July 19, 1943, at Senator Achille Gaggia's villa in Feltre. Here, Mussolini, Bastianini, and Ambrosio meet with Hitler and the generals of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht. The German delegation, notably absent of high-ranking officials like Göring or Ribbentrop, signals a focus on military strategy. Ambrosio has meticulously prepared for this meeting, impressing upon Mussolini the urgency of exiting the war promptly. The Germans, having lost confidence in the Italians, express interest only in occupying northern and central Italy themselves, while leaving the Italian army to fend off the Allies. They even propose that the Axis command in Italy be headed by a German general, such as Erwin Rommel. The meeting begins with Hitler openly criticizing the Italians for their weak military performance and demanding rigorous measures. However, the meeting is abruptly disrupted with news that Rome is being heavily bombed by the Allies for the first time. Ambrosio and Bastianini urge Mussolini to communicate the need for a political solution to Italy's situation to Hitler. Mussolini finds himself tormented by the decision of whether to abandon the alliance or continue the war. He struggles to assert himself in front of Hitler, feeling a sense of inferiority. Ultimately, the meeting, initially scheduled to last 3 days, is abruptly cut short by Mussolini, much to Hitler's annoyance. After saying goodbye to Hitler in Belluno, Mussolini returns to Rome in his personal aircraft, witnessing the aftermath of the bombing. In response to this inaction, Dino Grandi takes the initiative. On the evening of July 19, 1943, he departs from Bologna with a preliminary draft of his order of the day to be presented to the Grand Council. He reaches Rome the next day and meets Scorza on the morning of July 21, 1943, where he learns that Mussolini has finally decided to convene the Grand Council. For Grandi, this moment is the culmination of his long-awaited Gioco Grosso, the great game he has been preparing for. In the wake of the Felt meeting's failure and Rome's first bombardment, Italy's situation escalates rapidly. The day following Feltre, on July 20, 1943, Mussolini engages in 2 significant meetings with Ambrosio. In their latter conversation, Mussolini divulges his intention to reach out to Hitler, acknowledging Italy's need to exit the alliance. Ambrosio, still irked by the lost opportunity at Feltre, offers his resignation, but Mussolini declines it. Recognizing Mussolini's diminished efficacy, Ambrosio resolves to activate his plans for a putsch. Meanwhile, Dino Grandi and his ally, the Italian nationalist leader Luigi Federazione, are gauging support for Grandi's proposal within the Grand Council. They estimate that out of the 27 members, a handful supports it, several are against it, and the majority remains undecided. Grandi, aware that few of his colleagues can fathom the true consequences of his order of the day, which entails Mussolini's ouster, the end of the Fascist Party, and a potential war against Germany, opts for a deliberately vague draft to keep it open to interpretation. On July 21, 1944, Mussolini, responding to the mounting pressure, instructs Scorza to summon the Grand Council. The invitation is issued the next day. Grandi, seizing the moment, explains his order of the day to Skorza, who concurs with its direction. However, when Skorza presents the order of the day to Mussolini, it is bluntly rejected as not admissible and cowardly. In response, Skorza clandestinely prepares an alternative order of the day, aiming to consolidate power within the fascist party. The following day, Mussolini reports to King Victor Emmanuel III about the Feltre meeting. According to accounts, Mussolini assures the King of Italy's disengagement from the war by mid-September. This delay is partly due to ongoing negotiations with the Allies and Mussolini's need to rationalize Italy's impending defection. Despite the king's agreement, he increasingly contemplates a putsch, particularly in light of Farinacci's scheming to seize control and align Italy more closely with Germany. The king's decision ultimately hinges on the Grand Council's stance on Grandy's order of the day. On the same day, Grandy visits Mussolini under the guise of discussing a new book. Their meeting, initially brief, extends significantly. It's apparent from their conversation that Grandy implores Mussolini to consider resigning to avert a national disaster. Despite Grandy's persuasion, Mussolini remains defiant, pinning his hopes on a secret weapon he believes Germany is on the cusp of deploying. In the meantime, modifications are made to Grandy's order of the day by several key figures, clarifying the Grand Council's constitutional authority to depose Mussolini. This action underscores the Duce's governance under the king's authority as per the Leggi Fascistissime of 1925. The revised order of the day, now more direct in its implications, draws support even from Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law, who is unaware of the grave personal consequences this decision will entail. In the days leading up to the critical Grand Council meeting, Grandy intensifies his efforts, contacting other members to rally support for his course of action. The stage is set for a momentous confrontation, one that will irrevocably alter the course of Italy's history and the fate of its Duce. At 17 o'clock, on the 24th of July, 1943, the 28 members of the Grand Council assemble in the Parrot Room, adjacent to Mussolini's office in Palazzo Venezia. This meeting is unprecedented in the Council's history. For the first time, neither Mussolini's bodyguards, the Moschettieri del Duce, nor members of the M battalions are present in the Renaissance Palace. Instead, the area is secured by fully armed blackshirts. Mussolini, choosing not to have a stenographer, ensures that no official record of the meeting is taken. Dino Grandi arrives at the meeting with 2 concealed Breda hand grenades, having revised his will and attended confession, prepared for the possibility that he might not leave alive. Mussolini initiates the meeting by recounting the history of the Supreme Command and suggesting that its assignment to him had been influenced by Badoglio. He reviews recent war events and expresses readiness to move the government to the Po Valley, then asks the members to express their views on Il Dilemma, the choice between continuing the war or seeking peace. De Bono, one of the 2 remaining living quadrumvirs, is the first to speak, followed by Farinacci and De Vecchi. Grandi then presents his document, concluding with a quote from Mussolini about sacrificing factions for the nation's survival. Farinacci, in his turn, contends that the true betrayal is not of the Constitution, but of fascism itself. He calls for the elimination of Democrats and liberals within the party and the generals, proposing to unify the war direction with Germany under the king's command. After minor speeches, including one by Bottai, a fascist intellectual, and Ciano, who debates the history of the alliance with Germany, the meeting extends into the night. At 23:30, Mussolini suggests postponing the meeting, but Grandi insists on a vote, emphasizing the urgency due to the ongoing sacrifices of Italian soldiers. This marks the first time a vote is called in the Council's 20-year history. Mussolini reluctantly agrees to the vote and suspends the meeting for 10 minutes. During this time, Grandi gathers signatures for his order of the day. Following further debate, Mussolini warns that approving Grandi's order of the day could mean the end of fascism, and expresses doubt that this would satisfy the Anglo-Americans. He maintains his belief in victory and warns of consequences should the king not reaffirm his trust in him. Despite Mussolini's foreboding speech, Grandi counters, accusing Mussolini of blackmail and prioritizing loyalty to the nation. Scorza then surprises everyone by presenting his own order of the day, proposing to consolidate power within the fascist party. As the discussion continues, Suardo withdraws his support from Grandi's order of the day, suggesting a unification of the three documents. Ciano urges Farinacci to withdraw his order of the day in favor of Grandi's, but Farinacci refuses. Bottai declares voting for Grandi a matter of honor. After 9 hours of debate, Mussolini closes the meeting at 2 o'clock and orders Scorza to conduct the vote. Scorza votes against Grandi's order of the day, but Marshal de Bono's yes vote sways the undecided. Grandi's order of the day ultimately secures 19 votes in favor and 8 against. Mussolini acknowledges the approval and asks who should inform the king. Grandi responds, "You," leading Mussolini to remark, "You provoked the regime crisis." After the meeting, Mussolini remains with Scorza, discussing the legal standing of the order of the day and concluding that it is merely a recommendation to the king. Despite Scorza's advice, Mussolini refuses to accept the order of the day. Before joining his wife at Villa Torlonia, he phones his mistress, Claretta Petacci, and expresses his despair. "We have arrived at the epilogue, the greatest watershed in history. The star has darkened. It's all over now." Scorza then accompanies Mussolini to Villa Torlonia, arriving at 3 a.m. on the 25th of July, 1943. In the early hours of the July 25th, 1943, following the Grand Council meeting, Dino Grandi meets with Pietro d'Acquarone, discussing the situation until 6 o'clock. By 7 o'clock, the king is informed of the meeting's outcome. He quickly acts, notifying Badoglio that he will succeed Mussolini, with the transition planned for the 29th of July, 1943. Meanwhile, Mussolini starts his day unaware of the brewing storm. He finds a letter from Tullio Cianetti on his desk, withdrawing support for the order of the day Grandi. Mussolini, attempting to assert control, orders a search for Grandi at his Montecitorio office. Unbeknownst to Mussolini, Grandi is not in Rome, possibly evading involvement in armistice discussions with the Allies. Amidst this, Mussolini requests an audience with the king to report on the previous night's meeting. This request unsettles the king, who has already resolved to arrest Mussolini that day. The arrest is planned to be executed at 17 o'clock at Villa Savoia, orchestrated by General Castellano in collaboration with General Angelo Cherica, Commander-General of the Carabinieri. Lieutenant Colonel Giovanni Frignani oversees the arrest, with Captain Paolo Vinieri of the Carabinieri assigned to carry it out. Just before visiting the king, Mussolini meets with the Japanese ambassador, Shinrokuro Hidaka, who has been waiting for weeks. Mussolini requests that Hidaka ask Japan's Prime Minister, General Hideki Tojo, to persuade Hitler to negotiate with Stalin, indicating Italy's possible exit from the alliance. Later, Mussolini inspects bomb damage in the San Lorenzo quarter. His wife, Donna Rachele, cautions him against meeting the king, suspecting a betrayal. Mussolini, however, trusts in Victor Emmanuel's friendship. At Villa Savoia, Mussolini presents the king with the Grandi's order of the day and Cianetti's letter, arguing against its legal validity. However, the king insists on Mussolini's resignation, appointing Badoglio as his successor. Mussolini, concerned for his future, is assured of his and his family's security by the king. After the meeting, Captain Vigneri escorts Mussolini to an ambulance for safety, but they eventually proceed in his car to the Podgora army barracks, later transferring to the Legnano Carabinieri barracks in Prati. Following these events, communications are disrupted, and the new chief of police, Senis, orders the arrest of all gerarchy in Rome. The Ente Italiano per le Audizioni Radiofoniche, Italian body for radio broadcasting, linked to the Milizia Volontaria per la Sicurezza Nazionale, the Black Shirts, is isolated. Scorza, secretary of the party, is arrested but later released after pledging loyalty to the new government. The Milizia Volontaria per la Sicurezza Nazionale's chief of staff, Lieutenant General Enzo Galbiati, advocates against action, pledging loyalty to both the Duce and the king. Despite some officers' willingness to react, the Milizia Volontaria per la Sicurezza Nazionale is ultimately integrated into the Regio Esercito and disbanded. Upon receiving news of Mussolini's arrest around 1930, the Germans immediately notify Berlin, inciting Hitler's fury. Farinacci, one of the key fascist figures, promptly visits the German embassy, where he is met by General Feldmarschall Albert Kesselring. Kesselring suggests that Farinacci join the armored division M, a unit of committed fascists, stationed at Monterotondo, near Rome. This division could potentially march on Rome to liberate Mussolini. However, Farinacci declines the offer and instead requests to be transported to Germany. He departs Italy by plane from Frascati, ultimately landing in Munich. That night, Mussolini receives a letter from Badoglio explaining his custody's necessity. Mussolini offers his help to the new government and requests transfer to his summer residence. This request is denied. On the evening of the 25th of July, 1943, at 22:45, Tita Arista, colloquially known as the Voce Littoria, delivers a historic broadcast. He announces Mussolini's resignation and Badoglio's rise to the premiership, ending with a definitive note: "The war goes on. Italy will be true to its word." As the radio transmission ceases, the reality of this momentous change gradually dawns on the people of Rome. Across Italy, men and women step out to remove fascist emblems and propaganda posters from buildings. In Rome, the government detains senior fascists at Forte Boccea, the city's military prison at the time. Remarkably, the transition occurs with minimal violence, primarily limited to the removal of fascist pins and impromptu toasts to Badoglio. Thus, without a single shot fired, Mussolini's 21-year rule collapses. However, that night, German military forces spring into action. Units from the 44th Infantry Division and the 36th Mountain Brigade of the German Army breach the Alpine passes at Brenner, Reschen, and Toblach, swiftly occupying South Tyrol. Other German units penetrate Italy from the Julian and Piedmontese borders, with the trains carrying these troops adorned with praises and images of Mussolini. From the 26th of July, 1943, until the 8th of August, 1943, a significant German military presence is established in northern and central Italy without the consent of the Italian authorities. This deployment comprises 8 divisions and 1 brigade, the very same troops that Hitler had refused to provide to Mussolini just 2 weeks earlier at the Feltre meeting. On July 26, 1943, Hitler convenes several officers at the Wolf's Lair, among them being General der Flieger Kurt Student, the highest-ranking general of the elite Fallschirmjäger. He directs General Student to proceed promptly to Rome with all available parachute troops, with the primary objective of locating and rescuing Mussolini, who is believed to be on the verge of being handed over to the Americans. General Student is also tasked with potentially seizing control of Rome if the opportunity arises. Heinrich Himmler, the chief of the SS, eager for recognition, persuades Hitler to allow his troops to participate. Himmler nominates Otto Skorzeny for this mission, who is instructed to assist General Student. Skorzeny alleges that Hitler directly ordered him to rescue Mussolini, declaring, "I cannot and will not abandon the greatest son of Italy. He must be rescued soon. I hereby order you to carry out this operation." However, the authenticity of this claim is questionable. Skorzeny is known for exaggerating his own role in the operations he was part of, especially because of the fact that until that moment, the German Fallschirmjäger are renowned for their execution of special missions. Since 1937, they have been trained as a cohesive unit, exhibiting exceptional skills and successfully participating in various operations, including the assault on Ibn Imael, the Battle of Rotterdam, the occupation of Narvik, the assault on the Corinth Canal, and the costly airborne invasion of Crete. In contrast, Skorzeny's battalion Sonderverband, ZBV Friedenthal, is a recently formed unit, primarily designated for operations behind enemy lines in the Eastern Theater of War, such as reconnaissance, minor sabotage, and assassinations. It is improbable for Skorzeny to have transformed this group into a proficient assault unit within a few months, lacking the requisite tactical training and experience himself. Undertaking an operation like Unternehmen Eiche, involving an assault with gliders on the challenging terrain of Gran Sasso, demands considerable experience, which Skorzeny and his team lack. Therefore, it is highly unlikely for them to independently plan and execute such an operation, especially considering Skorzeny's absence of tactical training or experience. Following Hitler's order to liberate and transport Mussolini to Germany, General Kurt Student seeks assistance in locating him. This task aligns well with the intelligence operations conducted by Skorzeny's Sonderverband, ZBV Friedenthal, explaining why Hitler chose Skorzeny to support Student. Accounts by Karl Radl, Skorzeny's adjutant, also support this, mentioning that both Skorzeny and Moors are under Student's command, with neither having authority over the other. Skorzeny and his adjutant Karl Radl recount their collaboration with other German troops in the search for Mussolini. It is unclear whether these units are officially attached to Skorzeny's team. However, they appear to cooperate and provide support by sharing intelligence on Mussolini's whereabouts. Commanding officers, aided by Skorzeny's intelligence, utilize this information to lead their units and execute the operation. These collaborative relationships raise doubts regarding Skorzeny's and Radl's claims about their roles and contributions to Unternehmen Eiche and the successful rescue of Mussolini, evident throughout the operation. On July 27, 1943, General Kurt Student and Otto Skorzeny travel to Rome and meet with Field Marshal Albert Kesselring. Skorzeny is assigned the task of locating Mussolini and closely collaborates with SS Sturmbannführer Kappler, who assists the German embassy in Rome and maintains connections with both the Italian police and SS Obersturmbannführer Dollmann. The latter serves as the Reichssicherheitshauptamt liaison officer in Rome and has ties to the Italian elites. Initially, the Germans have an incomplete intelligence picture and are unaware that Mussolini is being held captive near General Kesselring's headquarters. On the same day, Mussolini is transported from Rome to the island of Ponza. Meanwhile, SS Obersturmführer Karl Radl, Skorzeny's second-in-command, selects 40 men from the SS Sonderverband ZBV Friedenthal for the mission to search for Mussolini. On July 28, 1943, Mussolini arrives on the island of Ponza. By July 30, 1943, the men from SS Sonderverband ZBV Friedenthal arrive in Rome. Their mission seems futile without local contacts, and they struggle aimlessly for weeks. German police and the Sicherheitsdienst intervene, with their chiefs Herbert Kappler and Wilhelm Hertel bribing high-ranking Carabinieri officers using counterfeit money from Unternehmen Bernhard. This leads to information suggesting that Mussolini has been moved from Ponza to La Spezia. On August 7, 1943, just as Otto Skorzeny is about to launch a rescue attempt in La Spezia, he receives news that Mussolini has been relocated several hours earlier. Skorzeny decides to abort the mission due to the changed circumstances. Subsequent investigations reveal flaws in Skorzeny's intelligence, as Mussolini was never in La Spezia. However, on the same day, Mussolini is moved from the island of Ponza aboard a destroyer. On August 8, 1943, the destroyer carrying Mussolini arrives at the island of La Maddalena off the coast of Sardinia. In mid-August, Skorzeny receives information from German Army Captain Huneeus, who was working with the Italian army, about a special prisoner held on La Maddalena. Skorzeny and SS Obersturmführer Varga travel to the island in disguise by minesweeper to gather intelligence. By August 26, 1943, Skorzeny and SS Obersturmführer Varga are at La Maddalena, where they discover that a grocer delivers fruit to Villa Weber, the suspected location of Mussolini's captivity, daily. Skorzeny engages the grocer in conversation, discussing the possibility of Mussolini's demise, but the grocer insists he saw Mussolini earlier that day, wagering that he is still alive. On August 28, 1943, possibly alerted by Skorzeny's investigation, Mussolini is flown from La Maddalena to Lago di Bracciano aboard an Italian Cant Z 506 seaplane. On September 1, 1943, Mussolini arrives by car at the lower cable car station at the base of Gran Sasso Mountain and is subsequently transported by cable car to Hotel Campo Imperatore at Gran Sasso. By this time, German intelligence has lost contact with Mussolini and is uncertain of his whereabouts. However, Kappler discovers a clue in a recorded phone conversation with the chief of police, which he relays to Student and Skorzeny. On September 7, 1943, U.S. Major General Maxwell D. Taylor arrives secretly in Italy to discuss the impending armistice with the Badoglio government. One day later, on September 8, 1943, Italy publicly surrenders to the Allied powers. German forces immediately attempt to occupy Rome and other regions in Italy, briefly diverting attention from the mission to rescue Mussolini. However, with sufficient intelligence gathered, General Kurt Student becomes concerned that Mussolini might be handed over to the Western Allies. Therefore, he redirects efforts back to the rescue mission. 3 separate and uncoordinated reconnaissance missions are launched. Lieutenant Leo Krutoff, dispatched by Student, infiltrates the Hotel Imperatore under the guise of searching for a potential convalescent site for German troops. Kappler sends SS Obersturmführer Erich Priebke, while Skorzeny, accompanied by Karl Radl, embarks on a Heinkel 111 bomber to capture aerial photographs. All reconnaissance missions confirm that Mussolini is being held captive at the Hotel Gran Sasso. On September 11, 1943, General de Flieger Student confirms Mussolini's location at Gran Sasso and immediately assigns his subordinate, Major Otto Harold Moors, with planning a rescue operation to be executed at 7:30 the next day. Despite the tight time frame, Moors and his second-in-command, Oberleutnant Freiherr Georg von Berlepsch, adeptly formulate a plan involving 12 gliders landing on a small open field near the hotel, a site discovered by Skorzeny during aerial reconnaissance on September 8, 1943. Another component of the rescue force includes 20 vehicles carrying the Stabs Company, the 2nd Company, and part of the 1st Company of the Fallschirmjäger Lehr Regiment under Major Otto Harold Moors' direct command. This group's task is to secure the lower cable car station at Fonte Cerreto, linking the mountaintop hotel to the outside world. Major Moores opts to remain with these companies in the valley to oversee operations in case of any complications with the glider force. The challenge lies in extracting Mussolini from the mountain. Moores deems transporting him by road too risky, thus considering two alternatives: using the cable car to bring Mussolini to the lower station, or landing a light plane near the hotel itself, albeit a riskier option due to the rugged terrain. The original glider plan for Unternehmen Eiche calls for 4 platoons of well-armed Luftwaffe Fallschirmjägers to be flown in by DFS 230 assault gliders. This comprised 90 Fallschirmjägers from the 1st Company des Fallschirmjäger Lehrregiment under the command of Oberleutnant Georg Freiherr von Berlepsch. Skorzeny and his men are initially not included in this assault plan. However, Skorzeny is undeterred. He insists on his participation, asserting that he is personally commissioned by the Führer. Since Skorzeny's efforts have helped to locate Mussolini, General Student feels compelled to acquiesce. Skorzeny further persuades Student to allow him to take about 15 of his own men along on the gliders. Despite his reluctance, Student agrees, feeling constrained by the circumstances. However, this decision enraged von Berlepsch, as he is forced to leave behind 15 Fallschirmjägers for men whom he perceives as having little value for him or the operation. Student assures Moores he will participate as an observer, you could say as a political advisor. Skorzeny also insists on bringing General del Polizia dell'Africa Italiana, Fernando Soletti, as a liaison officer. Soletti is tasked with preventing the guards of Mussolini from resisting. Skorzeny interferes once again with the planning process and insists on bringing a photographer and journalist with the SS detachment. Although annoyed, Student goes along with Skorzeny's suggestion, confident in the abilities of his soldiers to complete the mission. The planners quickly rearrange their plans. 1 platoon of Fallschirmjägers makes room for Skorzeny and 15 men of SS Sonderverband ZBV Friedenthal, the general and the photographer and journalist. This reduces the number of participating Fallschirmjäger from 90 to 72. All members of the Fallschirmjäger Lehrregiment are wearing the regular Fallschirmjäger uniforms and helmets. They are supported by medics and equipped with assault rifles, machine guns, and grenades. Both Skorzeny and his adjutant Obersturmführer Karl Radl claim that they are also issued with Fallschirmjäger uniforms and equipment. However, none of the pictures taken at Gran Sasso show them in or with this equipment. Skorzeny's group is clearly identified by wearing only Luftwaffe tropical uniforms, standard Wehrmacht helmets, and the German standard rifle K98. With these claims, both Skorzeny and Radl probably tried to exaggerate the role of their unit within the operation by asserting that their men were dressed as Fallschirmjäger. It should be noted that much of the original account about the glider assault comes from the memories of Skorzeny and his adjutant Radl. Other eyewitnesses and photographic evidence tell a different story. It appears that Skorzeny and Radl exaggerated their own role in this operation and minimized the role of others involved. The 2 photographers and journalists, Toni Schneider and Bruno von Kaiser, also provide important information about what really happened during the assault and the role of Otto Skorzeny and his men. With these last remarks, the stage is set for the start of Unternehmen Eiche, the liberation of the captured Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini. As we conclude this first part of our 2-part series, we've delved into the gripping tale of the tumultuous events leading to the fall from power of Benito Mussolini, the former leader of fascist Italy, and how he was betrayed by the men around him. We also covered the search to locate the captured Italian leader by German forces. We looked at the preparations for the operation leading to the liberation of the Italian dictator. But our journey is far from over. In Part 2, we'll dive deeper into the heart-stopping climax of this remarkable tale as we explore the daring Fallschirmjäger operation known as Unternehmen Eiche. However, we'll also shed light on the controversy surrounding Otto Skorzeny's role in the mission and how he allegedly stole the valor of the Fallschirmjäger. Join us as we unravel the intricacies of this daring rescue mission and examine the lasting impact it had on the course of World War II. Don't miss the next episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay tuned and stay curious. And that concludes this mission briefing, fellow warriors of knowledge. We've navigated through the trenches of information, delving deep into the battlefields of history. As we wrap up this episode in our campaign for understanding, remember that knowledge is your most potent weapon. Stay vigilant and keep sharpening your intellectual arsenal. We'll rendezvous again for another episode, continuing our relentless pursuit of enlightenment. Until then, keep your mind sharp, your curiosity burning, and your determination unwavering. Simultaneously, you are hereby alerted to our outposts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, fortifying our information dissemination. Should you possess any pertinent intelligence to bolster our mission, transmit your findings with no hesitation. Your contributions shall be prominently acknowledged within the operational archives. Furthermore, for those prepared to provide substantial reinforcement, navigate to our Patreon forward base and enlist. Your support is integral to sustaining our forward thrust. Carry forth the legacy. Dismissed.